Dog, and this is the Dog Pound. Oh, Max, we're up to episode number 74.
It is incredible, Jim. Absolutely incredible. It's been a year and a half.
A year and a half, I mean, 74 episodes of the Dog Pound. And the audience is getting bigger every day. Ladies and gentlemen, the Dog Pounders today, the Dogs Posse starts out with Max Zanan, the king of reinsurance. How you doing, big guy?
I'm good, Jim. It's great to be here. I think I almost have perfect attendance.
Yeah, I think you missed two of the 74
Yeah,
issues.
exactly. Exactly.
Unbelievable. You got a gold star on that report card. Absolutely for sure. Yeah, it's amazing. Today we're going to be talking about my most recent article in Digital Dealer magazine, and the article is called "The Elephant in the Room," and I'm sort of advocating that we basically forsake the factories and dealers start their own independent lots. I'm advocating that dealers start their own superstores. And we'll be talking about why that is with April Simmons from the Horn Automotive Group. Hi, kid.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. I'm excited to be here, and it's a spicy topic, but I think whether you go in pinky toe or you go in, diving in, this is great stuff for everybody to be doing, no matter what.
Great stuff for everybody. And if you're going to talk used cars, why not talk one of the premier pre owned dealers in the known universe? I couldn't get that guy, but I did get Tracy Myers.
I'll see myself out.
How you doing, Tracy?
Man, I'm good. It's an honor to be here. We've had conversations, several conversations about how I owe my career to you, and I sincerely mean that. So, you remember that? I think you remember that day at Atlanta Toyota when I was
Atlanta
a fledgling
Toyota,
salesperson.
I'm thinking it was 1990 or
It was
91.
1990. They had hired me, like most dealerships, unfortunately, hire salespeople. They said, "Oh, you're breathing. Okay, you're hired." And even though my great grandfather started the first Frank Myers store, my dad said, "You need to get out of here and learn from someone else first," right? And that was a good plan. So I'm sitting there sulking in the back room because nobody was teaching me anything. And you were there for a manager's training session or the owner's training session, something other than salespeople. When you just walked through, you said, what's wrong with you? And that conversation changed my trajectory because I was getting ready to quit that day and don't know that I would have came back into the industry. So thank you for that. And thanks for having me. I'm excited about the topic.
I remember the conversation. I didn't remember it was you until you reminded me a while back. That was Tracy, I hear stories like that all the time about somebody who I changed their career or something I contributed, and it just makes me really feel good. That's my legacy.
Yes, sir.
So today we're going to talk about used cars. Now, in my most recent article, The Elephant in the Room in Digital Dealer magazine, I talked about the fact that the manufacturers have gone what I say is slap ass crazy. I mean, Max, what do you have to do to be a new EV Lincoln dealer?
Well, you only have to spend $900,000. That's all.
To do what?
900,000, basically $1 million, right? And again, maybe right now, every Lincoln sells at sticker or over sticker like any other car in the country. But when the supply goes back to pre-pandemic levels,
when we
Lincoln
normalize,
sales will go back to pre-pandemic levels. And I think there were like 2 sales, right? You and Tracy's wife bought a Lincoln. That's it.
No, that's not quite true. I went looking for a Lincoln. Lincoln builds a fine automobile, but $1 million for the franchise, I don't think their marketing effort lives up to that.
Exactly.
But
listen,
not just Lincoln. We're picking
Jim,
on Ford Motor Company. Ford Motor Company is asking for more than $1 million for mainstream Ford dealers to go with the EV program. How many of your stores are in the Ford network, April?
We have 3 Ford stores. And you know, the thing about this whole buy-in for the EV stuff, the reality of it is the government is pushing the manufacturers to help build the infrastructure, and the OEMs are taking this opportunity to get the dealers to participate in what they're kind of being forced to do across the whole. So I think there's a lot of underlying currents about why these buy-ins are coming up and why they're, you know, kind of passing.
And it's not just Ford.
No, they're all doing it. Like, there's not a manufacturer that is not at some capacity having expectations of the dealership to help build infrastructure with it at the dealership themselves. So it's just the levels. Like, can you get away with a couple of chargers at your store and 40 grand, or are we talking about $1 million? So it's all over the map, but every single person, there's not a single OEM that is not passing some of the infrastructure costs onto the dealer. So I think that's, you know, where the core of this is just starting to create infrastructure everywhere that they possibly can, because they kind of have to, right? There's boxes that the OEMs are having to check mark for their, you know, what they have to do. So that's what's really happening. Now, the ROI, that's a whole nother conversation, right? Does that actually pan out for a dealership? So Lincoln to spend $1 million where is their point of return come back on that? Or does it ever?
Well, the projections I have seen say 4 years to break even with a Ford EV franchise. I don't even know the stats on Lincoln, but April, I have fallen into several documents from inside of Ford, correspondences to their dealers. Ford is optimistically hoping that 40% of their dealers will sign up for the program. And there are markets like Minneapolis where nobody has yet signed up.
Well,
I mean, nobody's going to in some of these markets.
What is the capability of them? You know, that ROI is a big fat question mark, and a lot of people are apprehensive because we haven't gotten inventory. So if you're telling me like the 4 years is the point of I'm going to break even and then I start making money, maybe it makes sense, but that's only if we actually get the inventory they're promising and then we actually sell all that inventory. So those are 2 big ifs on when that ROI actually pans out to the other side of that.
You cannot have both. It's either or. You either get inventory or you don't, right? And if you don't get
by the way, I misspoke a second ago. I said Minneapolis. I think some dealers in Minneapolis have signed up, but there are other major metros where no dealers signed up.
Now, this is the first aspect of this, but the other side to it, which is the service, which is the thing that a lot of people aren't talking about. And that's where for me, that's the biggest question mark. It's not necessarily the sales today. I call it playing chess and checkers at the same time, right? You got to play the short-term game because we all have to survive. But the long-term game, where is the end of this going to be? And I don't think any of us really truly know, but my guess is it's going to change and probably change 30 times between now and the end, right?
Well, you're probably wondering why Tracy Myers is here today, and I'm headed that direction here in a second. But I want to set the stage first. The manufacturers are overbearing, and nobody is signing up for the EV programs. The average car on the road today has been out there for 14 years on the average. The average finance right now is over $1,000 a month to finance a new vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
The monthly payment is averaging more than $1,000 a month. Cars are right at the $50,000 average or close to it right now. So in other words, the EV revolution and the built to order, Ford can't even, I got a Facebook user here. I've got to see what this guy's saying. Yeah. Farley stated that there won't be much service revenues on EVs since Tesla's service is mainly over-the-air updates, tire and brakes. So in other words, if you sign up for the $1 million program, you can forget about servicing these EVs. It's all going to be the profits from sales. And we know the manufacturers are not paying dealers an equitable commission for selling these cars.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the Mach-E Mustang, the invoice equals zero. Zero profit for the dealer. It's all whatever dole the factory plans to hand you as a bonus.
Mm-hmm.
And dealers are going to lay out $1 million. Now the other thing that we need to talk about, Car Bravo, the Ford initiative. Every one of the manufacturers is getting into what part of the business?
Used cars, EVs,
Used cars.
Control. It's all about the control.
Excuse me, General Motors dealers. General Motors dealers, pay attention. Don't sign up for Car Bravo. Have you lost your friggin' mind? You're going to let the factory get into your used car business? Why do they want to do that? Because they've seen Carvana. And Carvana is not successful, but they perceive it to be. Does that make sense?
You know,
So-
I got to tell you, Jim, the thing that I keep going back to on this is Jiffy Lube still exists, right? Like there's a lot of these service companies that are out there. And I think the part that we forget about is that we're so worried about the Carvanas and the Vrooms and stuff like that. But competition is healthy. We all need it. We all should have it. We're not ever going to get rid of all of the independent service shops. So why are we so concerned with trying to model car dealerships after these Carvanas and Vrooms and stuff? They have a piece of the pie, but they're not the pie, if that makes sense. And I think they had inflated success due to the pandemic that they're now starting to see happening, right? So let's stop trying to chase after pennies by stepping over dollars, and that's what I feel like is a lot of stuff is happening right now.
What if a franchise dealership stepped out and became an independent and ran their used car stores? Now the big guys are doing it. Penske's doing it. AutoNation has it. Who has Echo Park? But they're all coming up.
Lithia has Driveway. I think Echo Park is Asbury.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Echo Park is Asbury. So all the big guys have already got the jump start in divorcing the manufacturers. They're starting their own superstore used cars running exactly. Sonic is Echo Park, not Asbury. Sonic.
Quick Lane is Asbury.
Quick Lane is Asbury. So all of them have got their own private label. Why are they doing this? Because they're running used car dealerships with the efficiency of a franchise. And that's where Tracy Myers comes in. Tracy, what do you think about the concept?
Well, look, competition's always good. April just stated that. We don't have a problem with the competition. 30 years ago, we got deep into special finance and subprime because we realized really quickly that new car stores, there's generally too much red tape involved, or the deals are too hairy, as we say, for new car stores. And I think that's going to stay that way. I don't see
delinquency as record levels right now.
It is, but we've been here before. We had new car stores back in 2006 and 7, but we were pre-owned originally, and we were in that deal for 3 years and couldn't get out quick enough because we realized we weren't working for ourselves. I can't imagine how the dealers are feeling now, because looking back, things were pretty lenient in 06, 07, 08, pre-recession compared to the way they are now, because dealers are just handcuffed. So we took a big portion of our market share in subprime special finance, and we're going to stay in that lane and keep growing.
Max, what's your thoughts about the used car franchise?
I think it's the ultimate way to survive for a new car dealer. Because as April mentioned, the factory is all about control. And, if you're not going to service all makes and models, right? If you're not going to go after internal combustion engine vehicles for your service, right? And if you're not going to sell used cars, you won't be able to, write your own check. You'll constantly be under pressure to invest 900,000 today, another 500,000 tomorrow, get, a flat commission, right, for a sale that is not easy to sell a car, and I think you said what, it's like an $800 flat if you sell a Mac E, or $200, something like that. I mean, uh, you know how many Mac E's the dealer has to sell to be profitable? They can't produce enough of these Mac E's.
Yeah,
So
Mach-E is a limited production. They can't build enough of them.
that's my point.
So
That's my
what
point.
we're looking at right now is, could you run a franchise, a used car dealer with the same enthusiasm, the same processes that you run a franchise store with?
Yes, if you put your mind to it, if you stop being
Service
great,
department.
service
The dealers
department,
dealers have already got the financing lined up.
Mm-hmm.
that's right.
One of the biggest entry levels to a pre-owned dealer is lining up the finance sources. Is that right, Tracy?
That's correct. Yes. The independent dealers that call me, they're just getting into business. Most of them come from new car stores, and they think it's going to be easy. So they're already thinking the same thing you're talking about, right? They're tired of the stranglehold, so they're going to move into the used car lane. And then all of a sudden they realize, wait a minute, I don't have any lenders. And the reality is there's probably 3 that will sign them up nationally without any financials. And 3's probably being generous.
Well, see,
Agreed.
the dealers now have the financials if they do it now.
Correct.
If the franchise dealers like the Sonic Echo Park, like the Quick Lane Asbury, the Penske deal, all these people are opening these used car dealerships while they still have the finance connections with the mainstream banks.
Well, and I think there's something we all have to think about too. We kind of have a hybrid approach here at Horn Auto Group, and it's something that, looking forward, I think works really well, where you can have the benefits of everything. So if I have a new car franchise store, I have some benefits. Number one, I have all of those lenders. I have a fully functioning shop. I have the best place for acquisition, which is still trade-ins. Our best acquiring area is trade-ins on new cars, because trade-ins on used cars tend to start to get into the shrapnel area, right? So my trade-ins on my new cars are still my acquisition piece. And
send that shrapnel to Tracy.
no, so here's, what we tend to do is we don't take any of our cars to auction. We move them to our used car facilities, which is what these big guys are doing. So these Auto Nations and the big guys, they're just taking all of that inventory and they're moving it across country and putting it at these superstores. But you still got to have a place to recon those vehicles. So as we look at the waterfall charts, right, of future service by the lack of new car sales over the last couple of years, you start looking at the future in that service. How are you going to backfill your service departments? Well, one way is going to be in having more used cars to sell and reconditioning those cars, pushing those cars out to those used car facilities.
They're on the road for 14 years. Somebody's going to have repair facilities.
Correct. So we're still going to need our service shops. We're still going to want all of that. You've got to play kind of the short play, long play, and you've got to realize there's balance. There's balance to all of these decisions, and just make sure that you can't get buried in the short term, right? But that you're lining yourself up to make the most possible money long term by making sure you have all of it. You have your reinsurance, and you have your used cars, and you have your service. I want it all. That's the way I look at it. So that's kind of the approach we try to have.
Well, you know, cars are on the road for 14 years. I've said that several times. And somebody's going to have to repair those cars, number one. A, a car will run forever if you maintain it.
All right, pair them all.
I've been in Lincoln Town Car limos that are run by limo services recently, and that the driver had 600,000 miles on the engine. You know, so we can maintain those cars, but if the manufacturers are going to totally phase out on their viewpoint the ICE, internal combustion engine cars, I have predicted many times they're going to crash hard.
Mhm.
In my article, I said, I hope to hell that Bill Ford dusts off that apology speech he made to the dealers when he fired Jack Nasser. He's going to need that speech again. You know, that's because it's not going to turn out the way you think it's going to turn out. EVs are going to crash. Politics are going to change. Politics are going to change for sure. And when politics change, you don't know whether the EV mandate, you know, California, the governor of California just told the citizens, don't plug in your EVs because we can't support it with the electric grid.
Mm-hmm.
Don't plug in your EVs, and we're not even at saturation yet, and they're all going to do it. What's your thoughts, Tracy?
So my question is, once the major manufacturers, I guess they're all major to a degree now, right? But if they all switch in and put everything into EVs and they do away with the combustible engines, does that give someone else an opportunity to come in and take some market share? And we almost see a new revolution.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's about time. So,
oh, there is a revolution in the mix right now. I mean, there are dealers that are just, if Ford's only predicting 40% of dealers are going to have EV franchises, that means they're going to get rid of 60% of their dealers. Excuse me. If ICE is going to be phased out, let's pretend that Ford knows what they're doing, that General Motors knows what they're doing, that the President of the United States and whoever is predicting EVs knows what they're doing. Let's assume they all know what they're doing. ICE vehicles are going to be non-existent in 20 years. I mean, so if you are the 60% that doesn't buy the EV franchise, you're dead meat. You're roadkill. What do you think, April?
You know, I think just like the Carvanas and the independent service shops, EVs will be a percentage of the entire market. And we just need to accept that it'll be a small percentage, but I still like to do everything. My business decisions are based on the mass. What is the majority? And I've talked to, you know, going to Digital Dealer, it's always fun because you get to talk to people from all over the country. And when you get an opportunity to talk to certain people in certain areas, you realize they're in on EV and they have a huge demand for it in their areas, right? Here in Arizona, where I'm at, we're truck country, right? I am smack dab in the middle of truck country. So whatever I got to do to get more trucks, to sell more trucks, is kind of where we're at. And it got me thinking that there's probably a lot of the EV.
Oh, Phoenix, Arizona, you guys are urban rednecks.
Oh, we are country. We are truck country. Everybody's got a truck. Everybody's got an SUV, but there's a small percentage of people who really do have the EVs in that Phoenix hub, right? When you start getting into the city, where they get the extra HOV plate and they only drive so many miles, you know, there's a percentage of people that it works for. That's great. And if the ultimate goal of the government is to shove this really hard so that they get enough percentage so they can tell the world we've lowered our emissions, you know, so we can all have our trucks, then fine. You have your Tesla, I'll have my F-150 and we'll move on with our life. But I think that they just need to be honest about the real long game. That there's nothing today that says 10 years, 20 years, we can get rid of ICE without it being something completely different. If it's, you know, hydrogen or something else, right? Like there's other things that are being worked on, but hybrids to me is still the way to go. Hybrids, the combination of combining everything. hybrids have been tried and tested and true, and just I'm my gut tells me that, you know, we're not going to get rid of it, and I'm happy to participate because I'm greedy. But just like everything else, it is going to be a percentage, and
that is the reason for the broadcast. But the outcome of the broadcast is still going to be, when I was managing dealerships, when I was managing multiple dealerships, when I was consulting thousands of dealers. I mean, I have stood in thousands of showrooms in 49 states. I mean, actually worked customers in thousands of locations. I have done F&I. I've done sales management. I have taken TOs. I've demoed cars in more than 1,000, closer to 2,000 dealerships, I'm sure. And one thing I did when I was actively a manager, one thing I did as a consultant, is we kept back to the fence cars. We kept cars deep. Last statistic I saw, the average car was sold 4 times in its lifetime. Now, whether that statistic still holds true, or whether now, since they're on the road longer, maybe a car has 6 owners in a lifetime, I'm not sure. But the last statistic I saw was 4. And the new car franchise dealer sold it. The secondary dealer sold it. It went to the wholesale to retail, another dealer sold it, and it went back to retail. And the last guy that sold that car made more money than the other 3 combined. Think about that. The fourth guy in the chain, the 4th man or woman in the chain that sold that car made more money than all the others. Used cars makes a hell of a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. And when I was working with Lynn Hickey Dodge in Oklahoma City, and I did some training there. I don't take credit. They set the world record. I didn't have anything to do with that, but I did some training at Lynn Hickey Dodge, and I was there, and I participated in when they sold 2,815 units in a month and set the Guinness Book of World Records. But they had 2 things going for Lynn Hickey. They had Dakota Finance, which was a regular finance company that they owned, not buy here, pay here. This was a finance company that they could sell the paper to a third source after they loaded up the book. So you see what I'm saying? They had Dakota Finance, and they could put whatever they wanted on a trade-in. They set their own used car market. They threw the book out the window, whatever it took to make a deal, because they could finance it.
Yep.
So that's how they were able to set the world record. That model was 1994, but that model is still valid today. They sold that to cross-continent retailers. And they were selling, on the average, like 1,500 units a month. They only had that one 2,800 unit month. They were selling like 1,500 units a month. And they sold it to cross-continent retailers, one of the first public companies. And then within 3 months, AutoNation bought cross-continent retailers. And they closed the point and never sold a car again. But when you look at the behind the fence cars, we can keep a car longer today before we wholesale it. I mean, we've got service contracts that go into the 150, 200,000 miles. We've got the ability to, and I'm telling you right now, and the Highline dealers can open a Highline superstore. Those Highline superstores, there's a couple of them in Florida. Are you familiar with them, Tracy?
Oh, yeah. And they do a good job. You know, we've started to see for the first time ever, the 84-month terms they've been around, but we've never used them until this past year. And we started, you had to, right, to get the payment. But our average payment 3 years ago for our customers, and I say we sell bread and butter cars, our average ACV was $15,000 5 years ago. Now it's $22,000, and it's the same car with higher miles.
Bingo.
So we have to, and it was a $550 payment. Now it's an $850 payment, right? And that's stripped with no product. So you have to go 84 months. And these customers are generally 92% of our customers are going to have a higher interest rate anyway because they're special finance and subprime. So you're looking at someone with a 24% interest rate, 84 months. Unless they save a lot of money, they're forced to keep the car for 4 years. In this market, maybe not, but in the regular market, which will be in very, very soon, it'll be 4 years.
When the market normalizes
When it
again.
normalizes, correct.
When the market normalizes, when I first got into finance in the 80s, the early 80s, we saw the advent of 60-month financing. And everybody thought that was the end of the world because everything was 48 months. And a 48-month loan, you could still do a 3-year trade cycle.
Mm-hmm.
But then 60 months went to 3.8 years on the average car before you could trade out of it, before you had to break even point. But now the banks stepped up and started financing the upside down part of the deal on your previous car into the new loan.
Yes, and sometimes you're doing that in the past year, especially. We've seen them do it twice, and sometimes 3 times in a 6-month time span. Because
carry the negative equity into the new loan.
Yes, because cars have been appreciating instead of depreciating, but there's still negative equity just because that's the way math works, right? So trading 3 times in a 6-month period of time, it's insane. But that market is rapidly approaching where it's going to normalize, and we've got to get back to business.
The bubble has burst. Used car values are dropping right now.
Well, book values have dropped. Agree 100% on that. What we're finding odd in pockets in the marketplace across the country, because we buy cars wherever we can buy cars now, right? We used to do a three-state area, but now where we can buy them and ship them in, that's where we buy them from because market demand or market supply is so low. And part of it's what April goes back to what April was saying a few minutes ago about the new car stores keeping all their trades or majority, because I remember when I was trained in the business forever ago, my dad would take me to a Chevy store, and any Ford that was traded, they wouldn't put their used Fords on the lot, and vice versa. And anything over, that was out of factory warranty, you could buy as a wholesaler or a used car dealer, and that is not the case anymore. Look at new car dealer websites, and you'll see they've got 100+ thousand mile inventory, more than I've got in most cases, and that is definitely something that's happened the last 3 years.
Yep. And I think it'll continue going that way. And I think, a couple of people that, have posted up and talking about the bubble that's bursting, right? I think used cars are going to be absolutely key because we're going to hit this perfect storm, right? We had a perfect storm in 2008 that affect the housing market. And this perfect storm that's coming this time, I think is going to actually impact us even more than when that happened, because we have had all of these things lining up where used cars are going to start to drop, interest rates are going sky high, the market's going to compress, we're going to have people losing jobs or transitioning jobs. Everybody in this massive high of inflation went out and said, money, spent all their money, leveraged themselves to the hilts. So you're going to start to see the banks having to, take all these defaults back in. They're going to start to get tighter. So all of this stuff is about, is circling. History always repeats itself. It's just, are you prepared to deal with it when it hits?
One of the places to buy cars is going to be from the bank.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Because the bank is going to be holding a lot of inventory in the very near future.
Yeah. And so that's going to open up other acquisition opportunities for us to feed these used car facilities. If you're prepared, do you have the banks right now? Are you in subprime? Because we know that's what's going to happen, right? We're going to get a lot more people in that area. Do you have buy here, pay here? Are you ready to go when that time hits so that you can actually capitalize on it?
Dealers do not know how to hang subprime paper.
No, you need professional
for the most. And I mean, it's a whole different market. You're selling credit. You're not selling cars.
I don't know how to hang primary paper, so just.
Well,
It's a totally different.
Tracy, you go in dealer track,
Push a button.
you submit.
Right.
Automatic approval.
Right. I'll try that.
Pretty close.
yeah, you put it in dealer track, you put it in Route 1, and it's done. But
Right.
the truth of the matter is, I was getting deals bought through regular banks when there was no subprime, and I still teach people how to interview the customers and get the information. The art of working the banks is lost in the F&I department.
100%.
Nobody knows how to work the banks, and we're letting sales managers rehash deals instead of finance managers. That's slap ass crazy.
Yes.
I mean, I want the finance manager, the most highly trained individual in the dealership in that field, to be on the phone with a credit supervisor with a legitimate reason why the deal should be bought, except I need this deal.
Yep.
They're afraid to
So,
pick
I
up the phone.
Listen, I think I agree with you. They don't know how to hang paper, but at the same time, they really don't know how to keep service customers. Because if you look at service retention, once the factory warranty is out, that service retention in a new car dealership evaporates,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, like April said, we will have a much lower number of new cars in operation that we are going to be able to service in the next 2 or 3 years. And on top of that, right, dealers really don't know how to keep the customers. That's why all these independent mechanics, all these Jiffy Lubes are in business.
Yep.
Right? So this perfect storm that she's talking about is real, guys. And I think there'll be a lot of blood, and when we talk about acquisition opportunities, I think we're talking about dealerships being for sale.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, dealerships are going to have to be sold because the manufacturers are, but if Ford expects 40% of their dealers to sign up for the EV program, that indicates to me that Ford is saying 60% of the dealers are out. And 60% of the dealers are going to die when the EV when ICE dies. When internal combustion engines are finally extinct, those 60% dealers will also be extinct. And the blue sky will fall annually on those dealerships.
Agreed, but I don't think the 60%, I go back to what I said before. ICE is not going to be extinct. The people that are trying to tell us it's going to be extinct in 10 or 20 years, it's not. If it is, it's going to be something different.
We know it's going to crash. These people haven't seen the ball since the kickoff. But still,
the trucks and all of the stuff that is still needed for too many areas of the country where trucks are needed, and they're not ready to make those moves. Commercial vehicles that can't be, charging is not an option. So there's too many variables. I don't think that the 60% of the stores that opt out are going to be extinct. I think that I think it's that moment where you go, even they are saying, yeah, BS on their own previous statements that everything's going that way. Because it's not capable.
Shh, don't tell everybody. Now, by the way, we talked about hanging paper. If you want to learn how to hang paper, I didn't intend for this to be a sales pitch, but it's a good time for it. Buy my F&I textbook. You want to learn how to hang paper? The word tracks are in there. The scripts are in there. Things to say to the paper buyer, things to interview the customer. It's all in there. There's hundreds of closes, hundreds of ways to sell the finance products, and how to hang the paper. Buy my finance. It's a download. It's $75. I'm not giving my information away cheap. I just rewrote it last year.
Well,
Tracy, what are you thinking?
No, I was just going to ask, how likely is it, and I'm so far removed from the new car side, so how likely is it that if the dealers won't sign up, that they just kick out the dealer? Especially in small towns. I've got some friends who have
They don't want small town dealers.
No, look, I have a couple of dealer friends, and one's in a very small town, and he tells me, and I'm not going to give his brand because he's probably watching today. But he tells me all the time, he said, look, they're going to wake up one day and look at their map of dealers and they're going to say, why do we have a dealership here? Because it's a one-stop like town. True story. So I think all those dealers, and most are gone anyway.
I belong to a group online called the Select Dealers, and Ford calls the small Ford dealers the Select Dealers. I believe General Motors calls them the Main Street dealers. But there are small dealers that they treat differently than the big metro dealers. And they really don't like them anymore. Even though 100 years ago, 80 years ago, Henry Ford trucked around the country begging these people to open a franchise in their garage and their blacksmith shop and to start a Ford dealership. Henry Ford made lifetime commitments to these people's families, and that's what's being broken today. If you'll think about that.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
And I'm still saying the original premise of this broadcast, I am saying that the dealers need to look at Echo Park. They need to look at what are some of the others we mentioned? What are the manufacturers, the big publics? What franchises they open to used cars?
I think all of them have them at this point. I mean, I've got even local guys, like we have Bill Luke here locally has been this huge superstore. They have one across the street. You know, they're 300 plus used cars a month superstore. So there's even a lot of your smaller groups that have, you know, stepped out to do this and have been doing it well for a period of time. So I think big or small, no matter whether you're a one rooftop or multi-rooftop, I think everybody can participate in this. I mean, my used car store down the street is literally in a trailer. Like it's that's the facility is.
Well, let's talk about the biggest used car dealer in the country, CarMax.
Across the street. Oh,
when I left the Potemkin organization, Chrysler Corporation closed the Chrysler Plymouth point that Potemkin had in Atlanta. So our Chrysler Plymouth point, that point was closed. And they gave that point to CarMax. And CarMax Chrysler Plymouth was the first public company to own a new car franchise, right here in Gwinnett County. And they gave it back.
Why would they want it?
They didn't keep it. It's not Chrysler Plymouth anymore, or not Chrysler anymore. So, but at one time it was.
Too, like what, you know, are you renting land that these franchises, like some of these outside small, you know, like Tracy's talking about these small guys, if you own the land and you own the facility and the only thing is the franchise that the franchise actually owns, you know, if you have a good acquisition play, like Tracy said, we used to not be able to go very far to acquire used cars. Well, that's not the case anymore. With the computer systems and transport, we can get cars from wherever we need to. So these smaller towns can legitimately still sell and service their communities if they're prepared, if they know how to handle the secondary finance, if they know how to sell warranties and service contracts and put in their reinsurance and do all of these things so that they keep them coming back to them. The biggest way that you can keep your customers coming back outside of warranty is to make sure they're still under your warranty and still under your maintenance plan. Then guess what? They keep coming back to you.
Max wants to hear that.
So if we want to keep, you know, them from expiring, right, we need to hone in on those finance skills, hone in on our ability to pivot should the time come and have a game plan. If this, you know, I always say we need to have an ABC plan at all times. If this happens, we're going with plan A. If this happens, we're going with plan B. If this happens, we're going with plan C. And no matter what you're doing right now, that's what everyone should be doing. You should have multi-plans so you're ready to move when you need to.
Yeah, look, we're a highly adaptable industry, and we've proven that time and time again. And in 2006, with our 8 to 10 year cycle that we've always seen in automotive, or I've seen in, you know, my 30 years in automotive, in 06, we started getting ready. We opened reinsurance. We opened our own finance company, which we still have both. And both those helped us get through the recession in 08, 09. And the leasing, the used car leasing side, which we own that company as well, that will help us get through this next phase, because they have to come back to us. There's no other option.
Right.
If you'll notice, one of the people in the sidebar just said, Ford just announced that there are no longer select dealers or contact dealers. All dealers are now the same. Okay, I wasn't aware of that. That must be fairly new.
It is really new. They did they redid the entire org chart. So your reps now are not, the standard way we used to go through stuff is not the same.
So that's
part of the reason.
They just did that right at their dealer meeting. So whatever.
Well, there's a reason for that. Obviously, to me, if they're going to discard 60% of the dealers, they can't discriminate. So they have to get rid of the select dealer designation. Oh, they're all the same. Because the select dealers were claiming that Ford was discriminating against them. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, they definitely did. And they did it across, like, their full org chart has changed, like, for every single dealer. Now, your rep may not even be in your backyard. You're calling so-and-so for this and so for that. So they definitely just kind of re-streamlined the whole thing. They just, communication is key, and that's something they really need to focus on and stop doing this across the board and just say, here's our plan and let's move. But we'll see.
I just pulled up that article that I wrote in Digital Dealer magazine. And this is the article. It's called The Elephant in the Room. And kind of interesting, because in the article I talk about that CarMax dealerships go unnoticed. Sonic Group launched Echo Park. Penske has CarSense, and that was rebranded from Car Shop. Lithia operates Driveway, and Asbury, here it is, it has Click Lane. So all those big public companies, Asbury's got Click Lane. Penske's got CarSense, which was Car Shop. The CarMax dealerships are standalone. Why would a dealer even think about signing up for Car Bravo or Blue Advantage, which is the Ford and General Motors programs, to get into your used car lot?
Because they're brainwashed by the factory. That's why they sell factory F&I products. That's why they focus on their own brand retention and never think about servicing all makes and models. Right? The second they wake up and understand that factory is not your friend, that's when everything changes.
Well, the manufacturer is not your friend. There's somebody you do business with.
Right.
And they do hardcore business. They go by every line of their contract, and you think you got a handshake agreement.
They're like any other vendor partner, right? Like, they are a partner that we have to work with, but they have their own agenda, right? So if I'm buying if I have XYZ website, their agenda is to sell me, the extras and to do all the things. That's their job, right? As a vendor partner. And the OEMs are the same. They are a vendor partner who has their own agenda that they're always going to try to push their agenda from their point of view. And sometimes it benefits the dealer and sometimes it does not. But it's the dealer's job to communicate with the OEM or their vendor partners to ensure that they are getting the best of what is best for them. And you have to have your own game plan and your own plan so you know what is best for you. Sometimes it is better for a dealer to do certain things because the payback, the money they receive, if they're a one rooftop, maybe it does make sense for them. So I think every single dealership is different, just like their marketing strategy when it comes to working with the OEMs and what they should or shouldn't do has to be very individualized for that specific dealer. And you have to know what you need and want out of that partnership, communicate that with them, and know that they will always come at you with their own agenda because that's their job. It's their business.
So anyway, if all the big public companies are starting their own used car standalone franchises, standalone used, I'm thinking every dealer in the country needs to consider that model.
Absolutely.
While you still have the facilities, while you still have the service departments, while you still have lending relationships with Wells Fargo and any number of banks, and of course, Tracy will hook you up with Santander. Yeah. But how much of your business is mainstream? How much is subprime, Tracy?
Oh, we're 92% subprime by design.
By design.
Yes.
But are you familiar with a company that I don't know if they're still in operation in Florida, off lease only?
Oh yeah.
Tell me about that operation.
Yes, I haven't talked to those guys in years, so I'm not sure if they're still in business or not. But they made a big play on the used car side for several years and dumped a lot of money. Don't know the footprint was ever. It definitely wasn't as big as they hoped it would be. I'm not sure if they're around. So look, my advice with the leasing model, which I touched on that briefly. If you can financially do it because they have to come back to you. And
if you can do the leasing model, that would be incredible.
Yes. And even more so with dealers, a lot of new car dealers, for example, and now they're making a play for the used car superstores. But 20 years ago, they wanted to get into the buy here, pay here. And a lot of them failed. A lot of them failed because it's not the car business. It's it's collecting business, right? It's a program-based business. And they lost a lot of money and they said, I don't want to touch that. But with leasing, it's the same thing they've been doing. So, except they control literally everything from A to Z. And they can even put in the contract provisions where they have to come back to the service department if they have a service department, which we do too. So it's.
Well, let me ask you, what are some of the most successful? I know you're in the Independent Dealers Association. What are some of the most successful independents doing right now? The ones that are not targeting subprime, the ones that are targeting mainstream buyers.
Sure. So used car acquisition is huge with the more successful dealers. They got ahead of that early. And acquisition meaning unique ways to acquire inventory, primarily with the public, and not just sticking up a sign or a banner on their website, spending money and having departments or even standalone rooftops, which is our next play. We're looking at property.
Standalone rooftops to acquire inventory, to buy cars.
Absolutely, with their own.
We buy cars. We don't sell cars.
Yep, come to us. Different name, different rooftop, different location, different checkbook, and of course, it's all going to flow together. But that's been hugely successful for a lot of dealers, and we're looking for. We're looking for an office right now. Matter of fact, we talked about Danny before we came on live. Danny
Zaslavsky.
Yeah, Danny is a huge proponent of that, and I've learned so much from him in the last year.
VinQ,
correct. Yeah.
Great
Whether you use the tool or not, which is an excellent tool, but even if you don't use the tool, which makes life a lot easier, if you can't hire a used car manager to sit in an office space for 8 to 10 hours a day, that would be a tough play, by the way. Just thinking about saying it out loud and getting a used car manager not to be at an auction and to be waiting. But they generally have call centers, and they're inbound calls and outbound calls. It's I don't know, the more aggressive dealers that they were doing that a year ago.
It's amazing. I was teaching that 25 years ago. 25 years ago in my classes, I can still recall I was in Seattle, Washington. I was at a Mitsubishi dealership. You know what that's like. And Saturday was real slow, so I went into the Auto Trader and some of the print publications of the day, and I started taking the and highlighting different cars. Call these 5 people, tell them your manager saw their car advertised. We'd like to buy this car. We'll pay top dollar. We'll pay stupid money. Here, call these 5. I gave every one of the salespeople 5 people to call that were selling their cars in the classifieds. Mm-hmm. And tell them your manager saw their car in the paper. We won't waste your time. We'll pay stupid money. We'll pay ridiculous money. Just come on into the dealership. And I was doing that 25 years ago.
Well, and 25 years ago, I'm going to bet it was successful because it worked.
Now everybody's doing it.
Well, just think if you had a separate rooftop because it's friendly. If you go into the dealership, and people do it inside their dealership, by the way. Like Danny will do it inside his dealership, but he'll tell you right away, if you go in and try to trade them out of the car or sell them something else, the experience is ruined. Right?
No, you're just buying the car.
Yes, we don't even talk about another car, and that's a culture shift. That's a mind shift, paradigm shift. So just think about it off-site, another location, having an ad budget just for that with inbound and outbound all day. If you've got 100 opportunities all day, standard BDC numbers tell me 50% all the way down, 150, 25, 10, 5. If I can buy 5 cars a day, I don't have to go to the auction anymore.
Right.
So anyway, Max, you're quiet over there. What's your thoughts?
Listen, Jim, I think in the next 3 to 6 months, we are finally going to see who's for real and who is not, right? Because the last 2 years, every dealer, right, regardless of the franchise, regardless of the location, everybody is a superstar, right? And I think we're at a point where they convince themselves that they're superstars, that it's not the market, right? It's not the inventory shortage. It's their
Max, if you go on LinkedIn, they're all congratulating their teams on record months. I mean, if you go on LinkedIn, every other post on LinkedIn is, look at our superstar group. Well, I'm sorry. There's some pretty good managers you've got, but a monkey with a note in his mouth could have sold those cars.
Right.
Right. So when the moment of truth finally arrives, right, only a few dealers out there are going to be ready. And these are the dealers, right, that will focus on used cars, that will run their used car departments as a new car department. These are the dealers that understand service retention. These are the dealers that understand reinsurance or dealer-owned warranty company structures. These are the dealers that understand employee retention, right? Because we are in people's business. Without good people, you are destined to fail, right? And like April said, at some point, people will be transitioning from jobs. And that goes, for salespeople as well, because the last 2 years, the salespeople are making ridiculous money. All of a sudden, this is the same salesperson that has to go and beg a customer for a triple net loss, right? After getting 10 G's.
They've never been where we've been.
Right.
They've never been where we've been. I mean, and it's going to be really interesting. I'm telling dealers right now, get a separate facility, brand it with its own brand, license it with its own licensing, open your used car portal and start running it like a new car franchise. And that's going to be your safety net. And don't sign up for Blue Advantage or Car Bravo or any of these other programs where the manufacturer wants to get into your used car business. Do not allow the manufacturer to get into your used car business. Would you have a brain fart? What are you thinking about? Don't do that. So as we wind down the last couple of minutes, Tracy, what have we not talked about?
And we've covered everything in the last hour, right?
Oh,
the only thing I haven't covered, April's talking about some towns don't have any EVs. We still ride horses here, so we got a long way to go here.
This has been one heck of a good show. Everybody get Digital Dealer Magazine. You can pick it up online. Digital Dealer Magazine. Go to my article, The Elephant in the Room. That's the subject we're talking about. Why dealers need to consider opening a used car entity, a separate business, brand it separately, while you still have financing, while you still have service departments, while you still have employees that stay with you, you know, open that, because the big boys are already doing it. Penske's doing it. AutoNation's doing it. Lithia's doing it. All the big boys are already opening their used car dealerships, run just like franchise dealerships. Start thinking about that, because the manufacturers are getting ready to take a big dump of dealers. And those dealers are going to have a safety net. And ICE is going to be around for a long time. Electric vehicles are going to crash. They're going to crash hard. We're going to see all new executives, because these executives that are driving it right now, they're going to be history. You know, so of course that's just my opinion based on the fact that I have an IQ higher than an earthworm. But you know, everybody wave goodbye to the audience.
Oh, that's hilarious.